Happy Wednesday, everybody. I am Tiffany Service Gustafson, a digital strategist with BWG Connect, and we are a network and knowledge sharing group. We stay on top of latest trends, challenges, whatever is shaping the digital landscape. We want to know and talk about it. We are on track to do at least 500 of these virtual events this year due to the increase in demand to better understand the digital space. And we'll also be doing at least 100 in-person small format dinners. So if you happen to live in a tier 1 city, within the US, feel free to send us an email. We'd love to send you an invite. The dinners are typically 15 to 20 people having a discussion around a certain digital topic, and it's always a fantastic time. We spend the majority of our time talking to brands. That's how we stay on top of the latest trends. Would love to have a conversation with you, so you can feel free to send me an email at Tiffany, Tiffany, at bwgconnect.com, and we can get some time on the calendar. It's from those conversations we generate the topic ideas we know people want to learn about, and it's also where we gain our resident experts, such as Returnalyze, who's with us today. Anybody that we ask to teach the collective community has come highly recommended from multiple brands within the network. So if you're ever in need of any recommendations within the digital space, please don't hesitate to reach out. We have a short list of the best, and we would love to provide that information to you. Also note, if you have any hiring needs, we do partner with a talent agency, Hawkeye Search, formerly BWG Talent, that we can put you in contact with as well. A few housekeeping items. First and foremost, we want this to be fun, educational, conversational. This is about you guys asking those questions, sharing your experiences. So please feel free to drop in the chat. The Q&A will make sure both are enabled. If you feel more comfortable, you can always email me at Tiffany at BWGConnect.com, and we will be sure to get to them. And we started a few minutes after the hour. Rest assured, we're going to wrap up at least 10 minutes before the end of the hour to give you ample time to get to your next destination. So with that, let's rock and roll and start to talk about operationalizing data insights to reduce returns, where to start, and how to succeed. The team at Returnalyze have been awesome friends within the BWG network. So I'm going to kick it over to Christine. If you can give a brief introduction on yourself, that'd be lovely. And then we can dive into the information. Thank you.
Absolutely. My name is Christine Bradford, and I'm the VP of Customer Success at Returnalyze, and I'm excited to be here today. Thank you for BWG for hosting us again. Excited to be here.
Excellent. Well, I think it's pretty safe to assume, me personally having been in the experience of dealing with returns with a brand, is that all retailers would love to be able to operationalize their data. But that sounds like, whoa, that's daunting. And where would they start if they want to decide to do so?
Yeah, absolutely. Tiffany, before we dive in, I do want to give a quick overview on Returnalyze, if you don't mind.
And then perfectly with that.
Absolutely. No, that's all right. And I'll just flow right into the question. I do want to apologize. I'm a bit under the weather, so I'm going to try to make this as fun as possible for everyone. Please, make it interactive, as Tiffany said, and ask questions along the way. But Returnalyze is an analytics company, and we're on a mission to help retailers take control of their returns. How do we do that? We have a single source solution. It's an intelligent dashboard, and it basically allows our retailers to identify the unwanted returns, which are the preventable ones, versus the ones that it's okay if they normally happen, right? So it's all right if I purchase something, there's nothing wrong with it, it fits fine, just for whatever reason I don't like the style. But then there are those preventable returns where I'm always a true size 5, and if I order your size 5 and it's way too big on me, that's a bad experience. So I'm going to probably be very disgruntled. I'm going to send it back. And that's something, if you know that your last is trending large or small, it's something you can go back and prevent. Same as some operational issues that might occur, such as shipping delays or wrong items returned. Those are the type of unwanted returns that we help uncover. Also, we have a very hands-on collaborative approach. So everybody gets to work with me and my team over at Customer Success, where we like to consider ourselves an extension of your team and experts in the return space, right? So industry trends happening out there, best practices. We're there to partner with you and not just provide insights into what's going on with your returns and recommended actions, but also provide value add in terms of what might be happening in the industry, what are some best practices, what are different types of things we can test and try together to make sure that we optimize not just reducing those returns, but also the customer experience and their loyalty. So that kind of gives an overview of what we do. Our goal ultimately is to always help our retailers not just reduce returns, but provide a net increase to revenue. Also, the customer experience is very important, and returns do impact the customer experience, loyalty, and I'll get into that today. So we also, are working with our retailers to do those things. So, how do we start to operationalize data insights to reduce returns? Well, first of all, you need a system in place that's going to be able to identify all the different drivers of returns and areas of opportunity. So what we hear a lot from our retailers are, well, I might have some Excel spreadsheets over here. I use Tableau over there. I don't know what the department over here uses. And so everybody's kind of looking at things in disparate ways. Oftentimes retailers can identify I know that this is a bad category, but I'm not really sure why. Why are things getting returned at a high level in this category? The systems aren't usually talking to each other, and it's very difficult to understand things. It's also very difficult to proactively and predictively understand things. So it takes retailers a long time, and it's after the fact that they're like, okay, we're starting to finally now understand why these items were returned at a high rate versus getting ahead of it. So I think, just to summarize, the first step is making sure that you have one system that's bringing all the different dimensions together and all the different data viewpoints together, so that you can identify issues very quickly, and then you can be more proactive rather than reactive.
Proactive rather than reactive. Absolutely. I worked in home furnishings, so returns was always that like sore point that nobody wanted to talk about. That that's the bummer side of everything is, oh, the return rates, and then how do you make sense of it? So this is exactly right in your guys' wheelhouse. It's what you do. It's what you know best. Can you elaborate on how Returnalyze works?
Yeah, absolutely. So we bring all that data together. We'll bring all your different product data, your return reasons, your reviews, all the customer data too. If you have CRM segments in place, if you have loyalty programs in place, we'll bring that all in addition to manufacturing data, operations data, DC data, whatever it might be from a supply chain perspective. And we bring it all into one place. So then we can really start to identify the buckets of opportunity across the business. We can start to drill down and segment all the way down to a SKU level, and start to identify outliers, put together notifications to identify groupings of outliers and trends. We can build a deeper understanding of customer behaviors, their online experiences, and product factors that impact returns, and then how that impacts the customer's loyalty to a brand. We can also drive operational efficiency through predictive analytics and AI recommendations to make sure that you optimize your product procurement, your manufacturing, and your operations process.
Awesome. Friendly reminder, questions, comments, put into the chat, the Q&A, and we'll be sure to get to them as we move along. So step one, aggregating all that into one place. Now it's there. Now, question two, how do you prioritize that? And do you prioritize those items that, the low-hanging fruit that seems like the obvious that's going to affect your bottom line, or do you look elsewhere? What do you recommend?
So we take in a bunch of different factors, and we also work with you to understand what are your priorities, what are your business objectives, because obviously the system is going to point out a bunch of different opportunities. We look at multiple KPIs, so we're looking at not just return rates, but also volume coming back, profit loss, COGS, all those things, and then calculate what we call a recoverable revenue to really understand where the biggest opportunities lie. So then we can go ahead and prioritize based on that. But then we can also prioritize from there based on where are there resources available? where is the business headed in terms of their initiatives and goals? If you tell me I want to, increase my gross sales, or I need to acquire more customers and reduce my returns, then we can take all the different opportunities and prioritize them to align to your goals, and then also highlight the biggest buckets of opportunity, where if you start to take action and chip away at those bigger opportunity buckets, you should then start to reap the benefits and see the return on those actions.
Mm-hmm. That's so awesome. It totally makes sense, because with the systems in place that you're describing, you can prioritize those actions.
Right.
And you're thinking about it as opposed to just fixing what's in front of you, which I am guilty of doing in a past life for sure. So, I mean, that is the power then of using data to make those business decisions, correct?
Yeah, and sometimes it's a two-step process, Tiffany. So we might see an opportunity where the longer term solution is you may have to go back to product, you may have to go back to manufacturing, and you're like, gosh, that's daunting. That's a longer phase. So then we like to talk about recommended actions in two-step processes, or low-hanging fruit versus long-term actions, right? So what can we do right now to educate the customer better so that we reduce the returns up front? And then what do we do long term in order to, if we need to make any updates to a product, et cetera?
Mm-hmm.
So those are also options of how to prioritize. And that's what's great about Returnalyze, is we're able to give you a bunch of different recommended actions based on the insights that we're seeing. So then the business can go ahead and prioritize accordingly.
Fantastic. Questions, comments, put into the chat, Q&A, we will get to them. So from your lens and having worked with many retailers, brands, do you have some examples that you could share with the audience, some case studies per se?
I love this part of the conversation because I get to share real life examples. There's never any shortage of real life examples. I'm going to give two that that I love and that are my favorite to share. First one is in relation to a retailer that omni-channel. So sometimes retailers they don't have that omni-channel view. They don't understand what's getting bought online, returned in store. What does that look like? And return policy is a hot topic right now for everyone. Retailers are shortening their return windows. They're starting to charge for returns, for shipping, just to try to recoup some of those losses. So for this specific retailer, we are able to identify for them that they had customers that were not adhering to their 30-day policy. And usually the way customers kind of curtail that is they go and they return in store, because they can always swindle a store associate into, come on, give it back. And usually store associates aren't trained well enough, or they're willing to give the concession more than if you go through an online portal. So by pointing out to this specific retailer how many customers were actually returning outside the policy window, which brick and mortar stores were actually getting more returns after the policy window, what they did was they went back and they put in an education process with their store associates to let them know, we can't accept returns after 30 days unless, obviously maybe there's a damage or an exception. But they really wanted to start curtailing this process. So and they put a new policy in place, they reinforced it, they trained their store associates. And as a result, they saw a 50% reduction in items returned outside of the 30-day policy window. And also by curtailing a lot of final markdowns that were coming back as well, they were able to reduce returns by 20%. This is something else we see. Final sale, not always final sale. Customers, again, find a way to bring that stuff back. So, just by putting some new processes and policies in place, they were really able to recoup the benefits and see that reduction in returns. The second example I have is with a retailer that sells occasion wear or event wear. We know that occasion wear returns at a much higher rate. And we know that it's purchased for a specific event and it's due in a certain amount of time, right? So what we were able to actually identify for this retailer is that there was a specific group of products that kept getting returned at a high rate. Once we dug in a little bit further, we identified that it was their suiting, so their event wear. So when people were purchasing suits for a special occasion, and that all of their suits were delivering super late. It was taking 1 to 2 weeks to deliver or ship out these items. So as a result, customers were returning them saying, I don't need it anymore, probably because the product was late. I now have an event to go to. You're late on your delivery, so I'm going to run out and find the product elsewhere or get something else elsewhere. So suiting just was a really important category for this retailer. They said, this is our priority. We want to focus on this. So they went ahead and they started working in the DC and with their carriers to prioritize and reduce these shipping delays. So after implementing the corrective measures that they took within the warehouse, they were able to reduce their return rates as well, and recoup over $50,000 in recoverable revenue just in a 2-month period. So if you think about the recoupable revenue that could come for an entire year of fixing this error. And then just as important, the customer impact. So they saw thousands of customers that were no longer impacted by these shipping delays. And then the future customers that are going to come visit and purchase suiting from them aren't going to experience the same issue. So it should also improve the customer LTV at this point. So
yeah, awesome examples. And to think like that going into the LTV, I'd mentioned, we do 100 dinners a year throughout the country. And when we go around the table, what's top of mind to you? What's biggest challenge? What is your focus? LTV and increasing that is always a big answer around the table. It's always something like, we want to dig into this. How? A lot of times it's coming from the lens of the marketing team. Interesting to look at this from the lens of operational return side of the returns data and how that can make an impact on LTV.
Yeah, so oftentimes LTV or CRM segments are all based on gross sales. Christine spent, $10,000 with us last year and she's a loyalty top tier member, etc. But if I've returned 90% of that, am I really your best customer? So something we like to take a look at when we talk about LTV, CLV is first of all, layering in that returns, metric. So understanding, okay, these are your top gross sales customers, but when you layer in returns, maybe there's a segment of customers that are not doing so great. And you need to reach out to them, find out why they're making such high returns. Maybe it's changing the return policy for them to prevent them from returning in the future. And then you're going to have others, right, where it's a natural relationship. She's still profitable for you, meaning she's buying and returning, but she, in the end, the net profitability is still there. So that's a layer that I think most people don't think about putting in and taking a look at. Then from there, we start to think about things that can impact the customer experience in the LTV. I mentioned the shipping delays earlier, but there are other things like quality or damage issues. If you're a luxury retailer and I just perceive that the quality is not there and it's happening consistently with a specific brand or a set of products, you're going to want to know that so that your merchandising team can go back and either, reevaluate this set of products or address maybe damages or defects that are happening or occurring. The expectation mismatch from the website, colors, not being correct. People get really worked up, when they buy something and they say, hey, you told me this was red and it's orange. It's very, very orange. Or I remember I got a top once and the color description was like a forest green. And I got it and I go, this isn't green, this is black. So that can create also some customer friction and impact the loyalty. So we look at customers' repurchase behavior post returns, and we also break it down depending on what types of products they're interacting with. What that allows us to do is it allows us to understand if they interact with a certain product on their first purchase, it might be deterring them from coming back and repurchasing from you more than if they were to interact with other types of products on their first purchase. So then the marketing teams, the CRM teams, site teams can optimize, right? You're going to optimize to what types of products you promote to acquire customers. What types of products do you promote to then push her from a first purchase to a repeat buy? All of these are things that are going to increase the LTV over time and ensure she's having a great experience, her returns are low, and she's a valuable customer to you.
Mm-hmm. I keep thinking of the case study you talked about, the suits. Like if that's your first time purchasing a suit and it didn't make it to that big milestone event that you were planning to dress up for, and that's your first experience, can only assume, the LTV is going to be severely affected by that if that was your first experience with a new brand. Very cool. Love these examples. So it seems like the return experience and the brand loyalty go hand in hand. Would you agree? And if so, can you expand?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it just continues with the conversation we've been having. Returns play a role in brand loyalty, which then plays a role in the long-term value that a customer has for a retailer. Just to give you some more examples, I would also say making sure that you have not only the right system in place to identify all these key areas of opportunity, but also making sure that you have the systems in place for an easy returns process. And that if they happen, it's really easy for her to go ahead and make that return. And then if she wants to exchange, make that exchange. We actually find a lot of challenges with exchanges these days. When if you can just push them into an exchange, right, that's going to increase their loyalty to you and their LTV. Also, you can use predictive capabilities to get ahead of returns, right? So as you're launching new products and you're putting them on your site, you're going to want to know pretty quickly, right, if this product has a problem or if there's an issue. So getting ahead of it so that you can communicate to your customers proactively, hey, just so you know, this one's large, this one's small, we had an issue. It can also go a long way. Customers are known to be more loyal if things are processed correctly. If a retailer is proactively reaching out, we had a client that found out that the instructions on washing a specific garment were incorrect, and so when you wash the item, it fell apart. And so they proactively sent out a communication to anyone who had bought that piece, letting them know what the correct instructions were. And then they also, updated the details on the PDP to make sure people were clear on how to launder that garment. And then also I think something that we're starting to analyze and look at much more deeply in way of the customer affinity to a brand and their loyalty is all these changes to the policies I mentioned earlier. So if you're known for having a really lenient return policy and then all of a sudden you've tightened that up, what does it do to your customers? How are your customer behavior changing as a result of that? If you've always given free shipping and free returns, and then you start adding returns charges, shipping charges, a second fee on a return, you're really going to want to understand what that's doing to your loyalty and your brand affinity. So a lot of analyses we've been doing lately is, all right, what does that look like? We put these policies in place. What has that done to my customer base? Are they coming back? Are they not coming back? Things like that. And that's some of the ad hoc things that we can also do to be able to take a look at and understand where it's not really return specifically, but the policies around returns that might be impacting brand loyalty.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Questions, comments, put them in the chat. We will get to them. So just to recap everything we've talked about thus far. So if you have a system in place that does everything that you stated, or maybe you're currently working with Returnalyze as your solution, you are adding that benefit of one, being able to get the data, be proactive versus reactive on what you're deciding to do with your business decisions. And then you are not only helping your top, but your bottom line by reducing the chance of those returns happening in the first place, and then in tandem, increasing your LTV with the customer. Correct?
Absolutely. You're hired, Tiffany.
Thanks. I have a lot of experience with returns, unfortunately, in home decor. It's inevitable.
Absolutely. I think the key is being able to identify the key drivers behind your returns. Once you've identified why those returns are happening, then looking at the opportunities underneath those drivers and then being able to prioritize them so that you can act quickly, take the actions that you need to fix the issues. And then you can start to reap the benefits, as we talked about before, in terms of turn rate reduction, net revenue increasing, and then obviously the most important part is improved customer loyalty or brand affinity, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. All right, we got about 10 minutes left here, so definitely file in with questions. I do have a few that have come in. So who are the stakeholders that should be involved in onboarding an initiative like this?
Yeah, absolutely. E-commerce is typically always involved, right? They are the face to the customer, so I would say e-commerce gets involved because there's a lot of opportunity there and ways of reducing returns by reducing friction within the PDP experience, the site optimization, et cetera. From there, operations is a great team, however you're structured in that manner, whether it be a supply chain team or a team that runs logistics and operations. So that'll allow us to look at any of those things that are going out incorrectly, or delays or carrier problems, perhaps DC Q&A issues, things like that. Customer service or a CRM team, that is involved in terms of managing the customer relationship is a great stakeholder to have. And then the merchandisers, depending on your organization, but the merchandisers or the brand managers of way of who's determining the product assortment and what's out there. We didn't talk a lot about it today, but returns can also inform your product assortment and how you move forward with seasonal items from season to season, or how you optimize your carryover items. So that's another group. I would say if you start there, you've got a good footholding, and then from there, you can expand into other stakeholders.
Awesome. Yeah, I was thinking about product development, and just with all that data, that team being able to really understand like what that next, new product launch looks like based on the results of what they currently have in front of them could be hugely impactful.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. We have some great clients that design and produce their own product, and it's really great to be able to say, hey, this boot didn't do so hot this season because actually I'm using a real example, because of the shaft of the boot was too tight. There wasn't enough space for her calf to get in there. So it's great to see them go through manufacturing and then adjust the boot and then see the performance next season in terms of how much better it's doing as a result of their changes. Or a lot of times, Tiffany, what ends up happening is a retailer will use multiple manufacturing factories to create a single item. The customer doesn't know that's happening. However, what that does is it may create size and fit inconsistencies, quality inconsistencies. So then I'm frustrated because I'm like, guys, I normally buy this line of product from you and I'm always this size, or I always get this. And then the next time I order it again, because I love this product so much, it's not the same product. So that's where you see a lot of those customer reviews where they're like, this isn't the same as it used to be. What changed? And it may be that nothing changed. It just may be that I got a product. My product was made at a different factory than the previous product I purchased. And it's just an inconsistency that has to be uncovered and resolved.
So it can really get that granular to be able to find on the SKU level to track it back to that factory and see that, okay, that factory has a higher return rate per se than our other ones that are making the same exact pair of pants or whatever it may be.
Exactly.
That is very powerful because I would think from negotiation standpoint too, when you're working with different factories, if that factory has been problematic and now you have the data to prove it for negotiations and terms, it could be something to really bring to the table.
Oh, absolutely. And that's where our, supplier management and supplier alerts are important so that you can identify change in trends over time or find out when your suppliers are exceeding their returns allowances with you. That same retailer that implemented that return policy change, they use the dashboard to track and monitor the performance of their suppliers and hold them accountable to the damage rates and their allowance rates on return rates, and have been able to readjust contract negotiations as a result of taking data to them and saying, hey, guys, you're not, sticking to what we agreed.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. Questions, comments, get them in there and we will get to them in these final minutes. So a lot going on. Q4 is happening. Holidays are upon us. So how do you take something like this solution, which obviously can tentacle out and do a halo effect and be holistically make a huge impact on the overall organization? How do you make it a top priority? What are those like best in class clients that you work with that you say like, okay, they championed it and they made it a reality internally? What was the secret sauce there?
Yeah, I think, they, as I mentioned earlier in the conversation, they determined what was a priority for them as an organization. And then they just started to tackle it piece by piece. I think starting with the low hanging fruit, and then by looking at recoverable revenue, you start to look at where can I make the most impact, making sure that the stakeholders are available to action on it and carry it through. And then optimization. So that's another piece we didn't kind of talk about, but making sure that you're optimizing consistently. So with anything you do, right, you might be testing things all over the place, but with anything you do, if we make a change, we're always measuring the impact of that change so then we can optimize to it. Most of the time it's going good and it's in the right direction, and you just keep doing what you need to be doing. Once you've prioritized a lot of those initiatives and you've got a process in place internally, it becomes turnkey, right? Everybody already knows what they need to do and they're taking the action. And as results are coming through, either you stay the course or maybe you need to course correct slightly, adjust for things, especially as customer behaviors change, trends change, things like that. So I say some of, our most successful clients are the ones that are clear on what their business objectives and goals are, and then they align the opportunities we've identified to those goals, and we set a plan and we start tackling them one by one. It's not boil the ocean. It's let's look at where the biggest, opportunity lies, align it to your priorities and go from there.
And having that data in front of you really eliminates the emotion and opinion at the table as well, because the numbers don't lie, right? So that's one thing that I noticed. And, we get a lot of people that are passionate about the product, about, want to do a good job. And then you bring in these assumptions per se, because you don't have the data to back it up. That can be a slippery slope sometimes when you're trying to do, proactive change within an organization. So I think anytime you can use data to your benefit, fantastic. That's awesome. So Q4, any like last minute, like what should a retailer be thinking about when it comes to returns post holidays, and anything they can do at this point to be more proactive as opposed to reactive in January?
Well, I think having a system like this in place during the holidays helps you see what is happening in the moment rather than waiting to the end of January to analyze what happened in November, December, January. So you could even course correct. I know everybody goes into a freeze, right? But if you can still make minor tweaks to the PDP in real time to reduce those returns or the friction points with your customers, having the system in place during the holidays will help you, fix some of those things in real time. And then at the end of the holiday season, you can do a deep dive to really understand what happened, what went well, what didn't go well. What are we going to do for the next holiday season in preparation? And making sure that then you're prepared for the next holiday season, and using those trends and seasonalities to make adjustments. Also, using the predictive capabilities can start to allow you to predict out what might happen this holiday season. Understanding your key drivers will also allow the business to understand what might be, what's going on. I think sometimes people just panic, right? They're like, oh no, my return rate went up. Why did this happen? But if you understand that your first time buyers are going to return at a higher rate than your repeat buyers, and you just acquired a ton of new customers during the holiday period, it's natural for your return rate to go up. Now let's identify from there, how do we prevent those in the future? How do you start to curb that customer behavior with a first time customer? So I think, it's just important for people to monitor and get ahead of it as much as they can, and take action in as much real time as possible versus trying to be reactionary.
Yeah, the real time, that's key too for January. You think January is a big redeeming gift card season. So if you can make those reactive real time changes in the middle of the thick of it, which I know is a crazy time in December, but if you can, you could reap those benefits too, and increase your LTV and new customer acquisition in January with the gift card redemption. So something to think about. Awesome. Well, Christine, thank you so much. You always bring awesome intel to these webinars. Greatly appreciated. Definitely encourage follow-up conversation with the Returnalyze team. We'd love to have a conversation with you. That's how we get the topics for our future events. So feel free to email me, Tiffany@bwgconnect.com, and we can get some time on the calendar. So with that, it's a wrap. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Have a lovely week going into the weekend. And Christine, I hope you feel better.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you for everyone joining.